The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello. Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above us. There will be a prepare for takeoff. Start. 2, 1. Boost to ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride on this Monday, September 25th. Tuesday, September 26th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. Hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia as we are here for your listening entertainment 7 days a week. Let's welcome in everyone listening in on our terrestrial stations. WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music? Then rock with us to the birthday boy, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy and Sons of Apollo. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. Now, if you're on social media, you can follow us on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, and you can subscribe and download our shows from iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a better thing here. You got to join in. You got to sign up. You got to get on the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, what you need to do is just use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read the Encounter online. My latest blog in there is on there right now, but I did skip this weekend. I do want to tell you that. I did skip my blog this weekend because I was at the Provincetown Paracon. We'll get more into that momentarily. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We also got some great video footage from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV as well. The final Monday of the month, already, hard to believe, we bring in one of the top contributors to this show. Butch Witkowski from UFO Cop is a retired cop and a full-time researcher of everything paranormal and strange. From alien abductions to paranormal anomalies, Butch is one of the premier voices when it comes to studying the strange cases people are having. There's nothing off limits when it comes to research. Butch and his team have ran down Dogman and Bigfoot sightings in the forest, strange paranormal activities on farms that seem to have more mystery than answers. Butch is convinced there are experiences happening that need to be understood. But finding those answers is proving to be a hell of a lot more difficult than anticipated. Butch Witkowski, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fine. My pleasure.
I'm sounding a little rough here tonight. I can honestly say I'm battling my first cold of, well, geez, it's not even the fall. Not even the fall, man. And I'm already got my first cold already. And it started last week. I made it through the Paracon down in Concrete, Washington, until about 6 minutes left in my speech. And then the coughing gods got me. But we made it through. We made it through. That's all that matters.
It's 90 degrees here.
Oh.
I mean, we should be in the high 60s, low 70s. We've been in the 80s and 90s for the last 2 weeks. So maybe that teacher I had in grade school wasn't so goofy when she said that, you know, someday all the West Coast weather will be here and all our weather will be out there.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Last week, after the show, I went out on my patio, and I had ice on it.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. I'm like, it's not even the end of September. I don't want ice yet. You can't give me a forest fire summer and then not even wait until November before the ice starts coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just like, you know, I started like putting all the heavier clothes into the research truck to, you know, get ready for our trips out. Because it gets cold out in the woods and, you know, getting all that stuff in there. And then I find myself about a week ago, like taking all the heavy coats out and putting all the light stuff back in.
I know.
Which will happen because when I get there, you know, it's going to snow.
Yeah, if this continues, I'm going to have my Christmas decorations up in no time.
Well, I wanted to start off tonight by, I always talk about and tell people about research is like the number one thing that you do, no matter what you're looking for, whether it's a paranormal, crypto, or ufology, whatever, doesn't matter. That background research not only may help you in what you're doing or investigating at that time, but it also enlightens you. Now, we'll get into a recent case that we just got, but this is just something that just floored me. I live in a small, rural, Amish Mennonite area. I'm surrounded by farms. There isn't anything on a farm I can't get by just kind of walking up the street. And over the years, I found, some UFO sightings, and then in recent years, that picked up, and they came from those communities. And so I was doing some research for my area particularly because I just got a new case in this area, and I found this report. It says, at noon, a luminous object was seen to descend from the sky to a dry, swampless area 200 yards north of the village of Adamstown, which is situated in Lancaster County. That village is 2 miles from the village I live in. It was square, became a column about 3 or 4 foot in height and about 2 feet in thickness, said the newspaper report. The object reflected sunlight like a column of burnished silver. But after 10 minutes, it disappeared. Several people had gathered at the spot where it had rested, but there were no traces to be seen on the ground. The source was the Reading Eagle newspaper. The date was August 14th, 1869.
That's going back quite a while.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, point out the obvious, but
yeah.
Back then, did you think that researchers or journalists back then, Butch, were a little bit more open-minded because we didn't know or we hadn't explored a lot of these areas yet to see what was out there? We're still relatively new to North America at that time.
Yeah, well, yeah, that and the fact that nobody knew what the giggle factor was yet. It wasn't invented. And it's funny, it struck me, this particular report, because the 3 active reports I have going on right now all started out as UFO reports and then turned into paranormal reports. And so I'm just going through just background research. And another thing popped up, and I have no idea why it even popped up in the research. But this one just amazed me. Polls have shown that 1 in 10 Canadians believe they have seen a UFO. That means that 3 to 4 million people are in Canada with UFO experience.
And probably the majority of them in my area. A couple weeks ago, we actually, during this show, I was following 2 reports on social media while I'm trying to do this show of UFOs, 2 different ones, about 30 miles apart.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't know what it was.
Well, I told you folks about the first case that we were working on where we got the UFO report, and it turned out to be these little unknown entities around the farm, distortions that we've captured on FLIR devices. And then the second one was started out as a UFO report and turned into a paranormal case, which is that was just totally bizarre. I had to call in a lot of paranormal help on that one. And the most recent case was a gentleman sent in a report, a UFO sighting report of orbs. The first case started with orbs. The second case was a triangle. The third case is now orbs. So right now he's out in Colorado. He's just finishing up some schooling out there, and he'll be coming home. Family lives on 212 acres. It's a working farm, very large. It's been in the family. The original deed hanging on the wall is signed by William Penn and his brother. Nobody else has ever lived on the property. It is Indian burial ground, as the other number one report was. And all kind of strange stuff going on, right? And so there, again, a UFO report has turned, or is turning into paranormal. He'll be back mid-October. We made an appointment to go down and meet with the whole family. The whole family, all the family lives on that land yet till today. Nobody lives outside that land. And they used to have Indian powwows on the property up until a few years ago, and they would invite the indigenous in to hold their powwows because it was sacred ground, and they respected that. And all the artifacts they ever found while working the farm, they've kept in a nice place, place that just not thrown in the barn somewhere on the floor. And the gentleman says that I asked if the powwows are still being scheduled, and he says, well, no, not exactly, because they had one of the higher-ups in the tribe come up and said that they can't be there anymore because they're not welcome. So they were probably either a tribe that wasn't from the area, or they were an enemy of the tribe that was in the area. So they stopped that. So I'm kind of anxious to really meet with this whole family and listen to all the stories and get all the information and see what's going on. Now, the orb thing with him, he said, that's pretty much, I've been seeing that stuff since I'm a kid. The first report where we got the orbs that turned into the little distortions, it's the same thing. That was all Susquehanna tribal area. So I don't know. I haven't gotten back far enough to find out what particular tribe was in that area where this location is located, but I'm anxious to get that going. And, the whole state of Pennsylvania, back in the mid-1700s, this was all Indian land. There were no white people here, and the few that were white people that were here were traders. I mean, they were trading, they were hunters. That was pretty much it. There was nobody putting up cities and buildings or anything like that. So burial grounds, even with our bipedals, where we have our main research area, which we'll be heading to shortly, that is sacred ground. I mean, it was built on sacred ground. The people that built on there, the people that built that big camp, had permission to build on that from the tribe. And there are certain areas that you just don't go into, which is part of the deal, I guess, when they did buy that land. And that's where our bipedal is. Or, as some people now keep telling me, I'm not dealing with a bipedal, I'm dealing with a skinwalker. But that remains to be seen. Not that I want to see one. I'd like to get it on film or on FLIR, but I don't want to walk up and shake hands with one, not quite yet. I don't think I've ever been that drunk. No, I haven't. But the thing that I'm getting to here is, although I poo-pooed this many years ago and really just backed off and said, this is nuts, was the fact that I'm beginning to believe, or I'm beginning to see evidence or pointed evidence to the fact that all this stuff is connected. The paranormal, the ghosts, the cryptos, the zoology, the ufology, the abduction. I think everything, the abductions, I think everything has some type of connection. Now, to find that connection, I would think that would take a lot longer than I'm going to be alive, but there has to be some kind of connection. It's just it's becoming obvious now, where even some paranormal guys, groups that I talk to, and gals, say the same thing. They're in the middle of a paranormal investigation. Somebody starts talking about UFOs or some strange creature running around the back field or the backyard. And I'm thinking, like, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, to say that they wouldn't be connected, I think, would be kind of a step back and foolish. To say that there's a possibility that all that is connected or could be connected, I think is the right way to stay in that frame of mind. And so Bigfoot, I know. I asked a paranormal group one time, I said, when you go set up these, and they do these weekend things where you go to an abandoned home, they set up inside, they do all this stuff, and they're there for the whole weekend. I said, do you ever put anybody outside to look up in the sky while all this is going on inside? I mean, you're getting EVPs, you're getting voices, you're getting noises, you're getting lights turning off and on, doors opening, this and the other. Is there anybody stationed outside to look up at the sky to see if there's anything going on there? And they always say no. I mean, I would think no matter what I'd be covering, if paranormal or whatever, I would have eyes to the skies and my surroundings especially to see if there's anything going on outside just as much as there is going on inside. A lot of these old prisons that are investigated, people report stuff in the sky all the time. But most paranormal investigators aren't concerned with what's going on in the sky. They're concerned with what's going on inside the building. And I think they're missing the boat there. I think they should be concerned, especially time-wise or weather changes, like something happens inside, say at 12:21 a.m., and the guy outside watching the skies or, whoever's outside doing that registers, a bright orb or a light or a triangle at 12:21 a.m. I mean, that's a little far to say that that's just a coincidence. And although I think there are more like-minded researchers at this point starting to see that come together, just like look at Bigfoot reports where people are seeing UFOs. Look at abduction reports where people are seeing strange creatures. So I think sooner or later, somebody's going to make that connection, and it'll have to be through good evidence. Excuse me. Whether it's video or multi-witness or whatever, somebody's going to have to put it together. But I'm really beginning to believe that these are all intertwined somehow. And of course, then the backgrounds of the indigenous and all the old stories and all these like old reports like I find, finding the case of the bipedal in 1865 in a newspaper up in Erie, which is an exact description, almost word for word, of what I got in 2014 as the first report. So I think these things have been around a long time. They're probably going to be a long time after we're gone.
I have thought for about the last year that there is some sort of tie-in between everything from ghosts to UFOs, Sasquatch, cryptid sighting. I think it's probably the most under-investigated topic of this phenomena. Why do you think that so many people are not looking into any correlations whatsoever?
Well, they get blinders on, One of the things that always really, really bugged me was, people that want to become UFO, any type of investigator, any type of paranormal investigator, it doesn't matter. And they never give it a whole lot of thought. They just go out and buy some equipment. They get a couple of their buddies, and they go do whatever they're doing. But when you really sit down, there was a book written. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. I have it here on a shelf somewhere. It'd probably take me about 5 years to find. But there was a statement in there. It was called The Characteristics of a Paranormal Investigator. And it said that, before you invest your time or your money in pursuing your career as a paranormal investigator, no matter what genre it is, you should consider whether you have the temperament and the characteristics needed for the job. And whoever it is, he's right, because clearly there isn't a pastime for this. It's not a pastime for the faint-hearted, let's put it that way. But equally, thrill seekers don't make the best paranormal investigators either. And ideally, in my mind, a paranormal investigator of any type is level-headed, open-minded, objective, confident, calm, patient, and an excellent communicator. And I think the most important characteristic in all that is objectivity. Realistically, most of these events that are reported as paranormal actually have a rational explanation. A good paranormal investigator will realize that, and he'll remain level-headed, and however compelling the case is for the investigation, he won't rush to any conclusions without proper scientific investigations and the gathering of evidence. And the investigators today kind of follow the pattern off of television. They see these paranormal groups on TV, and they try to emulate them. And nobody should kid themselves. A lot of people go out and do this for, fortune and glory. I don't know of anybody that has ever become rich being an investigator. I just don't. I don't know anybody that's ever become rich writing a book. So I think that as long as people start out the right direction in their head, they will gather really good information, and maybe, just maybe, they'll come up with that answer that's going to put two and two together and really nail it, that these things are all combined somehow, whether it's in the sky or on the ground or in the past. There is a connection. There just is a connection. There has to be. It's just too many cases that gel together when they shouldn't. And, we really look at that hard now. We really do. So, Bigfoot could be an entity from another world. We don't know. Skinwalkers could be real. We don't know. Ghosts could be fashionable for a while, and then all of a sudden, they start walking down the street, your big zombie apocalypse type thing.
Butch, I get that, and I know a lot of this, the only answer is we don't know. That is the biggest frustration for listeners of this show, other shows, paranormal television, but it's the truth. We have nowhere else to go with it. We don't know. And when you say we don't know of what we are actually trying to find out, is that maybe why so many people are refusing to focus on combining the aspects of ghosts, UFOs, aliens, cryptids?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I believe that. Because, it seems that in today's world, any type of evidence adds up to strong evidence to anybody. I don't care what they find. It's all of a sudden it's something. But there's an old thing in investigative work that it was an old quote from many years back by an old detective over in England who said poor quality evidence does not add up to strong evidence. And he's right. And just because somebody finds a footprint does not mean that they have a Bigfoot. And when you look at the Bigfoot argument from day one, there's no body, no capture, no hair samples, no body parts, no stool samples, no one shot with authentication. You got none hit by a car, none are found injured. There's no thermal hits with a FLIR, no definitive agreed upon video, no photographs that are worth anything. No shelters are found. And it's not just in the United States. That's globally. And again, no positive DNA has ever been presented. A lot of fake DNA or a lot of screwed DNA or a lot of contaminated DNA, but no DNA has ever been produced. So when people say, well, there is no Bigfoot, no, there is no evidence. You know what I'm saying? A guy shoots 15 people in a store. Well, you got 15 dead bodies, but you don't have the perpetrator, and you have no shell casings. So, you're looking for that evidence, and that's what people have to start doing. It's to get themselves acclimated to the different types of investigation. Running around in the woods, hammering on trees, ain't going to do it. I keep telling people that, and I keep seeing people do it on the internet, on YouTube, people that I know that do it. The guys that really find some things, and when I say some things, I mean decent prints or broken pathways or trees that shouldn't be the way they are, way high up off the ground, either scratched open or hung, unless somebody brought in a 26-foot ladder to do it, which I doubt. And these folks are looking for the evidence that you need to walk up to Dave Scott as Butch and saying, Dave, look at this. I got footprints. I got hair. I've got photographs. I've got FLIR. I've got this. I've got that. And all of a sudden, your whole outlook on what Bigfoot is has changed because you're looking at real evidence. Up until now, nobody's been able to do that. I mean, I can't say that there's a wild bipedal canine running around the state of Pennsylvania, although I have all the reports. I have 27 now. So out of 27 reports, and they're all different parts of that very large research area we have, I'm not going to be able to really say anything until I have it on a FLIR, because nothing hides from FLIR. So, you know, getting it on FLIR, and then a couple other tricks we're going to use with sound and lighting and some chemicals, hopefully will give us enough evidence to say, okay, we can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you what it looks like, and I can show you what we found. And we can show you maybe some bones taken from a cadaver of a deer or bear, and here's the chew mark of a real wolf, a regular wolf. Here's a chew mark of a coyote. Here's a chew mark of a coy wolf. Here's a chew wolf of we don't know what it is. It's like 5 times wider, but the same bite pattern. So all that kind of stuff is what people should be looking for. And, you know, carrying torches and nailing pork chops up on trees. Look, if I take pork chops into the woods, I'm eating them.
Me too. You know, I'm not fussy.
I'm not settling for jerky. If I got pork chops or ribs, I'm eating them. I'm not nailing them on a tree for something to come along and swipe them. Or donuts. There's another thing. I watched the show one time where a guy's out there with like 24 donuts. He's like walking down the trail throwing donuts. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I can see every little scavenger going like, yelling to everybody else, yo, donuts! And picking them up as he's dropping them.
That is a big waste of donuts.
See, it is.
Up here in Canada, that would be sacrilegious.
Oh, down here in Pennsylvania, that could get you shot.
It should.
Yeah.
I'm not for shooting people, but if you're going to be throwing out donuts into the wilderness, I mean, realistically, I don't know the show you're talking about. I don't know who would do something like that.
It was,
but I mean, to hear you say that there were investigators actually doing that,
yeah.
I wish I would have known that before my speech at the Paracon, because I would have definitely added that one in there.
It was, what's the guy with Bobo and Matt Moneymaker? His group. That's the guy that did it. Oh, Bobo was out there one morning frying up bacon. He fried up 2 pounds of bacon. He threw out about a half a pound. He ate the other pound and a half.
Well, yeah, you should never mess with bacon either. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's a religious thing.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's something that, and this is where a lot of people, like I said in my speech, I'm going to go back to this weekend for a second, Butch. In my speech, which I titled, I Hate the Paranormal, one of the things that I had mentioned was how, and I'm paraphrasing here, how we do a lot to shoot ourselves in the foot. How do we expect to have people take what we do seriously when we're throwing donuts into a bush, knowing that there's probably raccoons, badgers, rats, mice, you know, coyotes, foxes, whatever you want to say, that's going to grab that donut? You can't say that it's Bigfoot grabbing it.
No.
I mean, come on.
No. One of the best ways, and that I picked up over the years, and not getting involved in Bigfoot research, but listening to guys that really go out and do it. They don't go to conferences. They don't speak at conferences. They go out every weekend. That's what they do. And the one guy said, we were talking, and I said, what would be strange to find in the forest if you weren't, I mean, if you had a research area, and just say you're covering like 4 or 5 acres, that's plausible. And you got your team out there, and you got so many guys here, so many guys there, so you got them all spread out, and everybody's like, what would you tell them to look for? I mean, besides the obvious footprint, or 2 or 3. And he looked at me right in the face, and he goes like, if I told you, you're going to laugh. And I said, yeah, tell me, I need to laugh. And he says, how about a bird's nest? And I looked at him, I went like, a bird's nest. He said, think about that for a second. And I did. And the first thing that came to my mind is, what do birds make nests out of? Hair, scraps, twigs, hay, leaves. Most important thing in that list was hair. So he said, if you find an empty nest, now he said, I'm not telling you to go swipe one that's full of eggs, but he said, if you'd find an old empty nest, which he said, they're all over the woods. He said, take it, bag it, tag it, and have the hair looked at and see what you come up with. He said, you'll probably come up with deer, you'll probably come up with bear, maybe, some smaller animals. But he said, just suppose there's a clump of hair in there that's not identifiable. Now you got a clump of hair that could be used with DNA studies. It's not like you're going to find a clump of hair hanging on a bush. And then you have these cases of Bigfoots being seen, and just a few. Some of the reports go back a while, but some have just surfaced recently, and not by the groups. I'm not talking about the guys on TV or anything like that. I'm talking about these independent guys that are out there, where they're saying when they're seeing what they think is a Bigfoot, they seem to see a flash of light or a bright light close to the sighting. So what's that all about? Now, we have one bipedal case where the 2 gentlemen are coming up upon this thing in their car as it's alongside the road ripping apart a deer. And when they passed it, he noticed a glow around the creature, like an aura. And he said it was probably white, but to him it looked kind of silvery, more silvery than white. And so what's up with that? What does that mean? Are they transporting? Are they interdimensional? Or are they flesh and blood? And who's to say that something flesh and blood could not be interdimensional, if there is such a thing? Man, I'm getting a headache.
Well, but that's the problem that we have, Butch, and that's what I said in my speech this past weekend, is we're too quick to try and find the answer without trying to figure out all of the aspects and all of the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a detriment to any type of investigation that we are trying to accomplish. And I think if we slowed down and really took the time to figure out what it is that we are trying to solve, we may get to some answers faster. I don't know if we will or not, but there's always that hope that we can get there and that we can find out what is actually happening. What do you think?
And what it takes, Dave, is dedication. I mean, to go out there, to do what you went out to do, to look what you were looking for, gather whatever you could gather, and then take that back and, take it apart at the seams, whether they're photographs or topographical maps that have changed or a walking paths that weren't there, last summer, but they are there this summer, or tree branches broken off high. I mean, all that is evidence that points to something large going through a wooded area. And I'm not familiar with British Columbia. One day I will be. But in our area here, we have very thick tree growth, paths that were made many, many years back, or they're cut in. And one of the things that you have is the reliability of the stories of the past, which you have to throw into every investigation if you're out there, which is anything from the First Nations, the indigenous here. Those stories go back, hundreds of years, and there are white men representations in newspapers and drawings and books that verify, what they saw or what they say they're seeing or what they believe in. So everybody has to take all that information and go from the group going out, setting up the cook stove or the barbecue pit, throwing out the hot dogs or breaking open the beer, popping a 10 or 2, and, talking the night away, getting their flashlights, walking around for a couple hours, come back, eat some more hot dogs, drink some more beer, go back out, and then after 2 days, pack it all up and go home. If you're going to go out there, you should be prepared to go out there. I don't care if it's snowing. You should have everything set up that you can sit out there in the snow, or rain, or wind, or cold, because they're moving around, most assuredly. So why would you not be there? And this stuff that people say, well, the best time to hunt Bigfoot's in the summer. That's baloney. That's BS. The best time to be out in the woods looking for anything, I don't care what it is one, cool weather, leaves are down, the high brush is down, it's very sparse, so you can see what you can see. Don't rely on your eyes. Have good binoculars, good cameras, and more than 2 people. And don't put everybody at one table looking out the same area. We map and topograph all our investigations before we get there, so we know exactly where base camp's going to be. We know where Camp 1 will be, Camp 2, Camp 3, Camp 4. There'll be 2 guys in each camp. These guys are responsible for this section, these guys, and such and so on. So you almost plan it like a battle map. And all you're there to do is observe and listen and view anything strange. And at the same time have all your cameras working and going. And it seems like you have a small group of individuals that really are trying to use a scientific method to find what they're looking for in all the genre. And then you have the other groups, which are the majority of those groups, that basically go out for an hour or 2 or go out for a weekend for a picnic and, have a good time and come back and, write a couple good stories about they heard screams or howls or this, that, and the other thing. Okay, so if you had screams or howls, did you record them? Okay, let's say you did record them. Now, did you bring those back and did you get on a program to see what animal it might have been? Those programs are available and most of them are free. So if you got something howling, you can punch up that player on your computer and you can match it. So what you thought was a coy wolf or a coyote could have turned out to be a fisher, or it could have been a badger. Did you ever hear a beaver scream? I mean, whew, that's scary. So I think when people start to get more technical in their investigations and more involved, I'm not saying go out there with a stiff upper lip and don't talk to anybody. I mean, you're out there to find what you're doing, and you can have a certain amount of fun doing anything. But there comes a point where you really need to have your game plan all in a bag. And when you leave your residence or wherever you're leaving from to get to that area, that discussion starts. See if there's anything we forgot. See if there's anything we missed. You're going to pass all kind of stores and everything else in case you did forget something. You can stop and pick it up. But to go out there and look at one of the guys and saying, okay, who brought the binoculars? And somebody says, oh, I forgot them. Well, might as well go home. Who got a camera? Oh, crap, I forgot film, or my batteries are dead. Well, let's go home. I mean, people go out there, they're so not ready to do what they're supposed to be doing. But then they come back and they tell these great tales on YouTube and blog radio and conferences, and I just stand there and shake my head. I like to listen to the guy that was standing there with three of his friends, and something was behind a tree, and they all witnessed it. And the one guy's a police officer, he's got a gun in his hand. And everybody else is like looking at him going like, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. And he said, I can't shoot it. It looks too human. That's the story, I believe.
So why do you think, then, that so many researchers out there are afraid to combine all of these stories and combine the evidence? Do you think it's a matter of being thrown for a loop? And let me explain that for a second. Because one of the things I had mentioned in my speech at the end of it this weekend is I had stated that maybe, just maybe, it's time to take the word science out of the paranormal. Time to get rid of science out of the paranormal. Now, a lot of people will be scratching their head when I say that, okay? But for 90% of the people out there right now who say they're conducting anything scientific, you know as well as I do they're not. It's only obvious. So if we get rid of that word science and stop having people throw it around like it's a baseball, and just as frequently, maybe we could actually get down to finding some real answers as to what's going on. What do you think of that theory?
Oh, I think it's a good theory because, first of all, the science, the science that's out there, the scientists, to them, we don't exist. We're a pseudoscience. We're just, a bunch of guys out there playing games until we walk in with real evidence. And they're not going to waste their time or their good name to bring evidence forward that is what they consider fake or useless, before they stick their neck out. And if these guys want to be accepted by the scientists that really look at that stuff, then one of the things they need to do is get scientific. Start doing it the right way. Stop playing. And this other group that's out there is going out. What's the name of the show? Killing Bigfoot. Why would you want to go out with that on your? If that's what you're looking for, why don't you just get a hunting license and go out and shoot a deer? What is killing Bigfoot going to prove? First of all, you're not going to get one. I'm sure there's a lot of good hunters out there over the years that had the chance and didn't take it. But they have so much Hollywood is involved in this now that it is shameful. It's just crazy. We get calls all the time, Lon, I, Sean, and other researchers from California to do shows, TV shows, all the time. I've had them from England. I've had them from Japan. I've had them from Spain, Mexico, Europe, to do shows, a reality show on investigations of UFOs. And I'm polite, and I answer the emails, and I just told them, I always tell them I'm just too busy. But I think once you do that, you're not going to present any evidence that's any good because they have a show, they need sponsors, they need to get paid, so they're basically going to tell you what you found and what you didn't find. And you're really not going to question it.
But a lot of people would say, Butch, that maybe Killing Bigfoot is the television show to watch, because if they do bag one, we now have a body for scientific proof.
Well, just watching the chat room tonight, some folks are talking about the Mount St. Helens Bigfoot, and there actually were two. One was dead, one was wounded. They were both taken out by government people. Another question Joe Monk just put up was, has anyone ever taken all the Bigfoot DNA results and compared them to each other? There's actually never been any Bigfoot DNA found, ever. And to take DNA, you need to have a control subject. So if I want to take, say I find something and I want to connect that DNA to Joe Monk, I need to take DNA from Joe Monk because he would be the control subject. So since there's no Bigfoot ever found, where are they getting the information on the DNA from to begin with? Because they do not have a control subject. I mean, you dig up a body. Who'd they just dig up? Famous artist, Picasso, or somebody. Well, no, the other guy. Anyway, they just dug up a famous artist because somebody just recently said that they are related to him through marriage, and they're like the illegitimate child or whatever. And they dug up the body, and they took the DNA from him. He was the control subject. And the person that said that she was related to him, they got DNA from her, and there was no match. So without control subject, talking about DNA and Bigfoot is just kind of wasting time because there is no control subject. Now, Gigantopithecus, you know, they had the skull and they have some teeth. So they do have some DNA there, but all it did was take them back to a large ape. There was nothing else to it other than it was the DNA proved that it was an ape and the size of the teeth and stuff like that. That was a very large ape. Gigantopithecus was a very large ape. But I think a lot of talk about DNA is kind of like blowing smoke. You know, we're looking for DNA. Okay, so let's say you find a patch of hair, or you find an arm, a big hairy arm. That's all you find, big hairy arm. Okay, so you take it in, you test it. So, okay, it's going to say, the DNA will say that, you know, it is an unknown species of ape. I'm not going to say it's Bigfoot, because they don't have the DNA of a Bigfoot to match it.
There is a lot of evidence. Edie Kaito out of Indiana actually has teeth marks, and they were within, I think, 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch of the same type of teeth marks that were found on, I believe, deer bones at Mount St. Helens.
Yes, and that's what I'm looking for with the bipedal. I want teeth marks on, if I find dead deer, I mean, we're going to go over that dead deer. I don't care how old it is. I'm going over that dead deer like he owes me money. I have a real wolf, full-grown gray wolf bite mark because I got it right from up the street. We have a wolf sanctuary up here. So I have a full bite mark. I have a coyote bite mark, and I have a coy wolf bite mark. I just ordered a coyote skull and a coyote, a coy wolf skull, and I'm trying to save some shekels to get a full wolf skull. And that way I will not only have bite mark proof, but I'll be able to match it up. Now, once you get bite mark, that's a different story, because like I said before, you know, a coyote's a long, thin nose, so his bite mark is very slim. A coy wolf is a little wider, maybe by 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So you go from 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 to 2.5. That's the difference between a coyote and a coy wolf. You take up the bite mark of a wolf, a full-size wolf, and you're looking at about a 5-inch spread. So that's like, again, half as big as the coy wolf. Now, if I find a bite mark that's larger than the gray wolf by a couple inches or more, that shouldn't be there. There is no animal like that. And, you know, that's when you start making the wax impressions and you start taking it to, you know, the people that do that kind of stuff and to biolabs. And I'm going to answer Joe again here. Yes, Joe, they did get DNA from the Gigantopithecus. I think 2 molars. And it came out ape. So it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It was a known species.
Quick question out of Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio from Canadian Joe. Different Joe. This one's Canadian. And
Okay.
and he says, how do you know Bigfoot DNA won't come back as part human?
We don't. We don't, because we don't have any. I mean, we just don't. Oh, yeah, it could. Yeah. I mean, but we don't have any DNA to even think that way. Dr. Melba Ketchum, when she sent all the collected DNA and hair and all the stuff that she collected for a couple of years down to the, I can't remember the name of the group. There's a group in Australia. They catalog the DNA of every species on this planet. That's known. And she sent all her stuff down there, and they went over it. She sent her report with it. There are some things that she did properly, and there are some things in the DNA strand that she did not do properly. And she was swearing and declaring before that was even back out that there was a human connection to Bigfoot.
Hey, Butch, I'm going to get you to hold on. We're going to finish that answer right after the break. Butch Witkowski from UFOcomp.com is our guest on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Butch is a monthly contributor to this show, coming on the final Monday of every month with Strange Days. We'll be back with more Bigfoot talk right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from UFO Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night on the program, we get back into the secret space program. Olaf Phillips will join us. We're going to see what's flying up in the skies above that none of us really know about. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. If you want to follow us on terrestrial radio, you can do so on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. Also on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM. Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Physiophilosophy. Physiophilosophy is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us on Facebook during the show at the SOR Space Travelers group for some great live chat with everyone else in there, like Bill, Robert, Robin, Joe, Joe's hair, Bob. They're all in there hanging out. You can also find us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read the Encounter online. You can also watch some great videos from UFO Seekers and Contact TV, rock out to some Bumblefoot, and more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. The final Monday of the month means it's time for Strange Days with UFO cops Butch Witkowski. Butch comes on the final Monday of every month to talk about the strange, the weird that he is investigating, from aliens to Bigfoot and everything in between. Butch, welcome back.
Fun to be back.
Right before the break, we were talking about DNA and why there really isn't any out there. Do you think, and this leads to Eric Cooper's question, that there is some sort of government conspiracy about why we're not finding any bodies out there?
Well, I'm going to tell him a little story quick. Some friends of mine that are avid Bigfoot researchers, and I mean, they go out, they do the job, they do it the way they're supposed to do it. And they were walking into this was a few years ago, they were walking into their research area. It was about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. So they're walking down this lane in the woods, and out of the side of the woods comes this soldier dressed in full combat gear, night vision goggles, M4 rifle, radio, the whole 9 yards. And he's as surprised to see them as they are to see him. And they looked at him and went like, "Good evening." And he looked at them and went like, "Up, just out hunting bear," and turned around and walked back into the woods and disappeared. Now, there is no military base within 200 miles of where these guys were. So here's a guy in full combat gear, radio connection, night vision, the whole 9 yards, M4 rifle, everything, combat ready. What the hell's he doing out there? What's he looking for? So it's not so far off to think that the government isn't involved in it somehow or another. And I need a lot more information to put those two together, but it's not. I wouldn't say no, it's not possible, because look, the Germans tried it in World War II. They were trying. What were they trying to breed? They were trying to breed, I believe, an ape and a human to make a super soldier. So who knows? And but I think the Bigfoot's a little bit of a stretch, because the stories of Bigfoot go back so far when there were no soldiers. So I don't know. Or did they actually get a group or one or two and weaponize them? Who knows?
The story that I did want to mention earlier about Ape Canyon at Mount St. Helens in Washington State was in 1924. A group of miners claimed to shot and possibly killed one of the creatures, and later that night, that while they were in their cabin, they were surrounded by a bunch of Sasquatch that were pelting their cabin with very heavy rocks in some sort of revenge. So that's a story I wanted to bring up.
Well, there's another one. I don't remember the dates. It was probably the turn of the century, and it was up in the Northland somewhere. I don't know if it was in Canada or if it might have been Alaska, but it was in the Northland someplace, where a couple guys that were collecting beaver pelts during the winter, and they set up their camp. They had dogs, And the one guy just was going to start supper, and the other guy said, well, he's going to take the one canoe and go downstream and check the traps and set a couple more, and by the time he comes back, he'll be ready to, sit down to eat. And the story goes that he did what he was going to do, and when he gets back, he doesn't see any smoke or fire, so he doesn't know what's going on, so he kind of gets the boat up, and out of the, I think it was 6 dogs, 3 were killed, 3 were pretty badly wounded. His partner was ripped to shreds. He was just torn apart, but he wasn't eaten. Neither were the dogs, and none of the victims showed any claw marks like a bear, which would have been in that area, in that area, grizzly, most likely big brown. And so then rocks started flying toward his direction. So he grabbed up one of the 3 dogs that were wounded, threw them in the canoe and beat feet out of there, and got to authorities, and they came out with a team. And when they came out with the team, the dogs' bodies and the human body parts were gone. The camp was just as destroyed as when he left it, but there was no sign of the dogs or the other remnants of the other hunter. But there's a lot of those stories. But, when you try to find them or try to find the proof of them, like a police report or RCMP report or Alaskan Patrol report, I mean, they're just not there. So are they folklore? It's very possible. I mean, there have been a lot of guys in the United States say that they've killed Bigfoot and buried them. And one guy said he killed 2 of them and buried them. And then when he went back and they weren't there where he took all these researchers to find the bodies, he said, well, the government must have came and got them. Well, it's pretty easy. He doesn't have to prove anything, right?
Question from the chat room from Alan. Do you believe the Dyatlov Pass incident was Bigfoot or Yeti related?
Dyatlov Pass, one of my favorite research. As a matter of fact, I've been researching that thing for years. I was just talking to a researcher last night about it. The Dyatlov Pass incident. Well, I would say it's possible, but no footprints were found, and the bodies weren't. If a Bigfoot hits you in the chest and stoves in your chest, there's going to be damage to the outside. Some of the students that were found, had all this massive internal damage, but there was no damage to the outside. And the Russians' autopsy report on everybody that was found said it was an unknown compellable force. So what the hell does that mean? They get hit by a bus, or some kind of ray, or did a bomb go off, or nobody knows. I mean, the damage to the bodies is not consistent with the report. A compelling unknown force. I mean, what does that mean? I, like a lot of researchers that look into that, are still baffled by that statement. But if you have somebody out there that is really looking into the Dyatlov case, there is a book. Got it right here on my desk, and it is called Dead Mountain, and phenomenal. Really well written, written by a guy named Donnie Eichar, E-I-C-H-A-R. It's the true and untold story of the Dyatlov Pass incident. And it has a lot of information there that's not on the internet. A lot of photographs, a lot of mapping, a lot of information on the investigators that worked the case. A lot of stuff that was never brought out, via the internet. It's a gripping book, and it's really something. So if anybody, you can get it on Amazon. It's called Death Mountain. But really, if somebody's interested in that research, you got to get this book and read it. It's phenomenal. The stuff that I couldn't find that this guy did, and he had some inside help, in the Russian investigators, and it really makes you think. Now, a lot of people don't know that these 9 hikers were killed, okay, and then that tribe that lives up on the Orton Mountain, they had 9 hunters die. Another group of hikers went missing in the 70s that died and were never found, and a plane crashed into Mount Orton with 9 fatalities. That's kind of a coincidence. 9's the magic number.
Much like in music with the 27 Club.
Yeah, and you have also, after those bodies were found, why did the Russian government shut that whole area down? There was nobody allowed in that area. I mean, even the people that lived, those indigenous that lived there, they weren't allowed to roam outside of their area at all, under penalty of being shot on sight. So what was that all about?
You have to wonder, when it comes down to that, if it was some sort of government conspiracy, like some testing range of some type of super weapon along those lines. Because let's face it, when that happened, the Cold War was just getting underway. There was a lot of things happening, a lot of tension. It was in the time of the war in the Korean Peninsula. You know, there was a lot of things happening.
You had some of those bodies were radioactive. I think 1, 2, 3, 4 of the bodies showed radioactivity, and 4 of the bodies showed radioactivity, and the skin was a bright orange color. And they said, well, that happens when, you are buried under a lot of snow. Well, that's bull crap, because they find people up on Mount Everest that died 50, 60, 70 years ago, and they're just finding them now because of snow melt, and they're not orange.
Do you think there was some sort of chemical weapon or compound used that these people got caught up in?
I've heard that it might have been some type of a gas, but nobody's been able to prove it, because look, when they shut that place down for a few years, they could have went in there and cleaned everything up. You never would have known it if there was any remnants left. And who would have gotten in there to do that, any kind of testing, except them? I mean, you or I couldn't have went over there and said, hey, we're up here just to check the rocks and the snow and see what we can find. And but the Yeti thing, which was the indigenous answer, I mean, that's what they were saying. It was an Iceman that did the damage, but the bodies didn't show that. I mean, the one guy's skull was crushed, and they found his hair on a tree, so he either was thrown into that tree from some force, or he ran into that tree in the dark. And then you had the couple that were found that, they had so many internal injuries, but they had no external injuries, and that's kind of hard to do. Even if a boa constrictor would have you and crush you inside, there would still be marks on the outside.
That's why I'm wondering if it was some sort of high-tech weapon of the time.
Yeah, and that's a very good possibility, because, the lead investigator, Amberbroff, I think his name was, he was only on the scene for a couple of the body finds, and then he just backed out. He just said, no, I'm not getting involved in this, and he just walked away from the case. And he was like the man, like, this is Kojak. This is the guy. This is the guy you want here. And he was there for a few days, and then either he was told to shut up or whatever, or he found something that he shouldn't have, and he just backed out of the case, probably to save his own butt. I guess back in those days, it really didn't pay to open your mouth.
especially with the government being very, very communistic, and I believe under Stalin at that point, which was a very, very difficult reign, so to speak.
And they're still doing it till today. They kill off their own guys. Oh, the guy with the umbrella stab. I mean, he was in England when he got stabbed. So, and the one, what the heck was he? Some kind of member of some group. Somebody got into his apartment while he was taking a bath and weighted him down with lead so he couldn't come back up. Put enough holes in him that he just sank. He went down quicker than the Lusitania.
Let's get back to this side of the water and get back into Sasquatch research here. As you know, recently on your advice, I put a gifting site near where we had found footprints last year. Mm-hmm. And so what we put up there was we, following your advice, got some shiny object, toys, Hot Wheels. You mentioned to put Hot Wheels up there because unlike Edie Kaito's gifting site in Indiana, with the amount of animals that we have trudging around here in BC, from grizzly bear, black bear, moose, badgers, wolves, coyotes, foxes, you name it, putting food out is just not going to be conducive to a good gifting site. So I had called up Butch and I had said, what do you suggest? And you had mentioned Hot Wheels, the little toy cars, and shiny objects. So we got 5 different Hot Wheels. We got a couple of those plastic shiny slinkies, a yellow one and a hot pink one. And then we also got a bunch of those, those glass garden rocks that are different colors, and we placed those on a pattern at the base of it. And we put those all around. Why do you suggest toys?
A fellow that I know that has been doing that gifting thing for a long time and has had very good results. I mean, he hasn't found any, he hasn't walked into one or anything like that. But when he first started, he did the fruit thing. He put out apples and oranges and, bananas and all kind of stuff. And it wasn't getting him anywhere. Like you said, everything in the woods, somebody yelled smorgasbord, and that was the end of that. So he started going to yard sales and secondhand shops and just buying boxes of old the fake jewelry that they wore in the 40s, and a lot of shiny baubles and some toys, and started putting them out in his research area instead of food. And what he found was that some things were touched and some things weren't. Some things were moved, some things were left. So the best one for him was where he had found track a couple years prior, but none local. None recently, but a couple years prior, he had found a good set of track. And what he did was he had a toy and set this toy up on a pile of rocks. Now, you had to climb up this pile of rocks to get to the toy. But to get to the rocks, you had to walk through some really, really soft dirt. And there were no prints there, and he didn't leave any prints because he entered from the back end. And he put the toy up on the rocks. And he left it, he leaves his stuff out for sometimes 30, 60, 90 days. And he went back with his 2 partners, and the first thing they did when they rounded the corner to the big rock pile, he said, "It's missing." And they went down and they looked up, and they didn't walk into it, but there were 2 really good prints. So they photographed and cast the prints. And then he got this idea that all this other stuff he was leaving around, stuff that wasn't shiny, was still there. But stuff that was kind of like toys and shiny baubles and like beads, like from the 60s, the Love Child beads, that kind of stuff. He started buying that stuff and hanging it around. That stuff disappears. But what was amazing was and till this day, I mean, this guy is such a diehard believer that, I mean, if a big female Bigfoot would propose to him, he'd marry her. He's got something going there. And he found a string of beads at a yard sale. Matter of fact, it was a cigar box full of beads, but they were from the 60s, you know, like we all wore back in the 60s. Oh, man, I just gave my age away. But anyway, so he hung those on a tree, and he put them up pretty high, and then he hung them down the road a little bit, or down his path. He hung some more pretty high, and he let them go. And he came back, whatever time it took. He went back, and he went to that tree, and those beads were gone. But the toy that was on the rocks was in its place. And then he went around to the other side, or down a little bit, where they left some more beads, and another article that he had left was that was missing almost a year ago prior, was there, and the beads were gone. So it was like becoming a swap meet. He'd give them something, and they'd return something. And he said there was no damage to that toy. That toy looked just the way it was when he put it up there. So this is what he's been doing. And when people say they want to do gifting, I said, well, don't use food. That's, you're just kind of wasting your time here. You're just going to feed a bunch of little things running around out in the woods. Try different things. Whistle. He left a whistle one time. And he said when they were leaving, after they had looked over their thing and they photographed everything, and they document very well. I mean, they measure and everything. They were walking back to their vehicle, and a whistle that had been taken months prior, somebody was blowing the whistle. They figured out how to work that whistle. Like a cop's whistle, you know what I mean? So I think he's made a connection. I don't know how far it's going to go, but it's been working now for a few years. And, I mean, he has no fear going up there. He said, I've given them plenty of opportunity to do anything they wanted to me and my people. And he said, nobody's ever hurt us or growled. We've never heard any bad or rocks flying around or anything like that. He said, but it's almost become a game where, we try to hide something. And he said that's when he got. I was telling you about they use Matchbox cars. So he got a bunch of these Matchbox cars at a secondhand store, and he took them 2 out of the package. He had 4. He took 2 out of the package and set the packages someplace and set the boxes someplace else. I mean the cars someplace else, and then the other 2 he left inside the boxes, and he placed those in 2 different places. And when they came back, the one they never found. They found the box, but they never found the toy. But the other one that was outside of the box, but had a picture of it in the box, was now inside that box. I don't think any ground squirrel was out there playing with the toy like that and put it back in the box. So it's just, it's neat because it's weird. When you think about doing it, you're going like, okay, I'm going to go out and hang beads all over the woods. There's something wrong with me. I really need to settle down. But he's been doing it, and it's been getting results. And, he's hoping. He doesn't try to do anything funny, like set up traps that's going to take hair or anything like that. He has gotten prints, good prints, and he photographs when he gets on the scene. He photographs when he's putting the stuff in, just as you did, and he photographs the stuff in place. He has it all written down on paper besides the photographs. And then when they go back, they measure, they look at the photographs, they look at the positioning, what's there, what's not there. And to me, that is really fascinating research. That really is. Because who else would do that? I mean, if somebody sees a string of pearls hanging off a branch, they're not going to take them and bring them back.
So let's get to the logical question. I do not have any cameras out there because I don't have any trail cams or anything, and I'm a pretty firm believer from the stories I've heard after numerous interviews here that Sasquatch would be able to point those out right away and we probably wouldn't get something, or because of my belief that this creature has some sort of interdimensional capability that I don't think we'd record anything on a trail cam either. It would be more so for finding out what wasn't there rather than what was there, if you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. And then he doesn't use cameras either. The only cameras he uses is after he sets his stuff down, after he checks what he left prior, and photographs all that to see if it's moved because he has prior pictures. All he's doing is building up a case file. So he's taken what he left, what was missing, what's been photographed again, what's new, what's been photographed, measurements, where it's at, his little markers. Excuse me. And to me, that's really exciting because some of this stuff that he's putting up there, now, he doesn't buy anything expensive. I mean, he buys stuff that's, 2 for $1 at a dollar store or something like that. I mean, it's just junk, but it's shiny junk. And stuff that he's left that's not been shiny, like he left a stuffed toy one time. It was never touched. As a matter of fact, it just rotted away. It never moved. But like marbles, toys, just shiny baubles, Christmas tree balls, like you hang on a Christmas tree. He hung a couple of those on a tree, way high. As a matter of fact, one of his buddies shimmied up and put them up there and hooked them on, just like he was hanging on a tree, Christmas tree. And he said when they went back at their next trip to check and leave more, the balls were missing off that tree. They were across the road on another tree, but much lower. So something got up that tree, unhooked those, and took them over across the road and hooked them up again. Now, I just don't see a bear doing that or a squirrel or anything else. There is some type of intelligence in the woods. And I'm talking bipedal canine, I'm talking Bigfoot, dimensional, interdimensional, whatever you want to say. There's something out there that is way smarter than us, knows how to avoid us, and if we get it or get a photograph or something, it's going to be dumb luck. And that's what I've come down to. One of those, on our research, something will walk into one of those camera traps, and my cameras are taking a picture every half second, so I don't have to touch them. I can just point them in a direction, and that's the end of it. The FLIR devices, the ones we have, we can take a still picture or we can record on video. So that's my best shot. That's all I can do.
Well, like I was saying, we don't have cameras out there. So obviously we have to turn up the skeptic meter a few more notches because there is chipmunks, there is squirrels, there are birds, and they all like shiny objects. They may want to check it out. It's also hunting season, which means we're probably going to see a few more people in the forest and probably wondering what the hell that is. So, or why someone would leave, a couple of shiny Slinkies or Hot Wheels in the middle of a forest hanging on a tree. And they probably, being hunters, aren't very big believers on Sasquatch. So, for the people out there, and including myself, how do we know if something has actually been touched or moved or taken by the Sasquatch?
His theory is, and has been from the very beginning, if he leaves a gift, he receives a gift. So even though, and I'm just going to use marbles, let's just say he sets out some really shiny marbles, multicolored type deals. And he goes back and the marbles are gone, but in their place there's an acorn. No hunter's going to do that. He's going to take the marbles and give them to his kid. He's not going to replace them with acorns or pine cones. That was another thing. He had little cars taken, and a pine cone was left. So he would take the pine cone and replace it with another car, and then the car would be gone next time, and another pine cone was there. So then he would leave a pine cone, and then a car would show up. That is not a hunter. That is something of intelligence that's doing that. It has to be. It just has to be. I mean, it's just common sense. It has to be. I mean, if you were a hunter looking for bear or whatever, and you see all this garbage laying around, you probably think, oh, somebody threw the garbage out the window, or if you did take something, you're surely not going to replace it. And he never takes anything big either. Everything he takes, he said he can fit in 2 jacket pockets.
That's the same way as what we did. We didn't take much out there. There's no point in doing so in regards to that. You know,
but now when you go out to check those, what are you going to think if you go look at, you know, some cars you put there, and now there's no cars, but there's a pine cone resting there, or you had some toys in a cluster, and now the cluster's gone, but there's some sticks arranged in a circle.
Well, I think the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to be looking around the area first to see if there is any signs of human interaction in the area. Footprints, maybe bullet shells or casings or whatever it is. We are going to look for that, especially in and around the area. Now, from the print that we found, the second print that we found last year, we put the gifting site about 45 to 50 feet, maybe even further, maybe 60 to 70 feet away from that. And the area where we put it, it was really strange, and I've shown you pictures of it. I've sent you the photos. And I've also put that photo on Twitter tonight at #SpacedOutRadio in regards to where we put it. Because on the ground, I noticed this spot last year investigating on the ground. Could be coincidence, could be not. I have no idea. But it almost seems like somebody has squared off this area with broken branches or dead wood sticks. And all the trees that are falling in that area, and there's a lot of dead trees in that area, they all seem to be congregating around one fir tree and leaning against that one fir tree, almost making like half a lean-to sort of thing. I mean, there's no straw, there's no bedding area or anything like that, but when you walk up to that fir tree, you will see that there is about a 8 to 10 inch by 5 to 6 inches wide of bark that's been pulled off right to the sap, and the sap has bled over the tree in that area. And there's 2 of those like that at about 10 to 11 feet high. Now, my first inclination with that, Butch, was the fact that that's a bear. A bear maybe, you know, stretching out its claws and pulling the bark off, or maybe it saw some ants up there and, you know, was trying to get at the ants in the bark. But then Mark, my outdoorsman and member of my team, had noticed that there are no claw marks. Right. And he was actually the one who noticed it first. And then I noticed the second one, and they were, you know, side by side. So, have you ever come across areas where you've seen bark pulled off by potential Sasquatch? Because I'm still leaning towards a bear. But I don't know if I put all these signals together, the trees leaning into the one tree, the way the sticks are set up on the ground, you know, kind of like cordoning off this area. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I guess, you could take a sample of, like I told you, take a sample of the wood there. But one of the things, I mean, if you go back to that area and that cordoned off area you saw is now changed somehow. Maybe things are moved more left or more right, or they're not there at all. Then, you know, I would start looking for, and I don't want to say a nesting area because lots of animals make nests in the woods. I mean, deer, elk, I mean, everybody makes nests. Bears lay down to sleep, you know. But one of the things that always intrigued me was a picture that I saw a long time ago, and it was taken up in Hamburg, Pennsylvania, where it was a series of, it was almost like a lean-to, but the logs used, I mean, you would have needed 4 guys to pick these logs up. I mean, these logs were 12, 14 inches in circumference, and they were long. And they were just leaned up against a series of old-growth dead trees laying down. It kind of formed a lean-to. But the fact that somebody went to the pain to cover the cracks, on the roof with pine trees and pine needles and pine branches, and there are none around there. The guys that found it, they walked all over the place trying to find pine trees. There were no pine trees around there. So where did these pine branches come from? When they did go further on another expedition, when they came up the other side of the mountain, there's a lot of pine trees. So something took those pine trees, those branches with the pine needles and all that stuff on, and took them up over the top of that mountain, down the trail, and covered that lean-to. And the inside of the lean-to was, the ground cover was more branches. So it was huge. I mean, it wasn't like, you and I went hunting, we got caught out there and we needed to get out of the snow and the rain and all that stuff. And it's like, wow. I don't know who's lifting these up, but it ain't going to be you and me. I can tell you that. And there were like 8 of them. And, the guys were saying these things got to weigh at least, 300-400 pounds or more a piece. So who built that? Another thing to look at, and that I don't remember if I read it or I heard it at a conference. There was a guy that, now he's in the New England area. I think he's in Maine. New Hampshire or Maine, where he's been doing what they call rock stacking, which to me is like, okay, you go out and stack up rocks. But he's using some kind of mathematical equation, and he tried to explain it where, okay, I stack 5 rocks on the as a base, and then I put 4 rocks, and then 3 rocks, 2 rocks. I make like a pyramid. And then beyond that, I'll just lay a pile of rocks. And he'll come back, and there'll be an identical pyramid beside the one he built. Now, what's really cool about this is his property. There's nobody running around on his property.
Well, I did do what you said. By the footprint, I had a bunch of rocks stacked up, and you had asked me to move the rocks that were around it that I didn't stack. So I did move those out of the way. I shuffled them about 1 foot to 2 feet away.
Okay.
Not to disturb the ground too much. So, I mean, I'm not quite as curious about that rock pile because, like I said, there's hunters there. The wind knocks a tree over or a branch over. It could knock the rocks over. There's a lot of deer, bear, moose going through that area. So it's very easy for something to bump into them that I couldn't confirm was Sasquatch. You know what I'm saying? Unless I saw a giant print in that area. But where the tree is, where it's been scratched off, that area really intrigues me because surrounding it, Butch, there are so many different bedding areas in that area. Like just off the top of my head, I'm thinking within a, let's say a 2,000 square foot radius, there's probably 10 to 12 different bedding areas.
Wow.
That are big. Or pardon me, let's make that smaller. Let's say about 1,000 square foot.
Now, have you actually looked into those bedding areas? I mean, for hair or anything like that?
We have not. The last time we went in there, or the second to last time we went in there, we got growled at by something big lying down. And that's when my friend Corey and I went. And then after that, I decided at this time of year, I am not going in there without somebody who is armed.
That was probably my mother-in-law.
No, I think it might have been mine. You know, I know the feeling all too well on that one. But so that's the reason why. But you could tell in those areas. And my outdoors guy, Mark, he has been tracking in this area for about 20, 30 years. He knows these back roads like the back of his hand. And just about a week and a half ago, he took me out on a long drive. I didn't know where the hell he was going. And next thing we know, we end up on this what used to be a giant ranch, and there's wild horses running around there. Mm-hmm. And I'd always wanted to see wild horses. So he knows where to find these creatures. It's funny because in 35 years of tracking, he has never seen a Sasquatch print until I showed him, number one. But number two, he's a believer now over that, but we did kind of look into the bedding areas. We didn't really investigate, like get on hands and knees and look for any types of hair or anything because, we were limited on time.
Well, one thing you may want to put in your pocket, and they're very inexpensive. They're like $12. You can buy them for less than that on eBay. Fluorescent blue. My mind is wandering. Black flashlight, and just get down close and. If you get a hit like a stain or something like that, it could be drool, could be urine, could be anything. You want to bag that cluster, of course, with plastic gloves or tweezers. I carry throwaway tweezers. When I pick up something and I put it in a bag, I throw the tweezer in the bag and it's done. It doesn't get mixed up with other tweezers. And they're like a box of 50. I think they're like $12. But it's just the odd stuff, the weird stuff, the stuff that shouldn't be there is the stuff that, like with this guy, some of the stories that I get out of him, how they pick up stuff and things are moved and replaced and, he gives something, they give something back. He just, it's just weird. But it would have to be something that has some sort of intelligence. I mean, like the toy that showed up a year later. I mean, that's bizarre. And, I think Pennsylvania, what do we rank now? 6th in sightings, something like that. And since the 1800s, I think there's been more than 500 sightings of Bigfoot in the state of Pennsylvania. But now, till you deduct the misidentification of something, if somebody's not been in the woods, let's say somebody's not been in the woods, they're not a woodsman, they're not a hunter, but they're going out and they're looking for Bigfoot, and they see something big and brown run through the brush in the woods between the trees. It could be a deer. It could be a bear. It could be an elk. Doesn't mean it's Bigfoot. But I always tell people, I know there'll be an excitement part there where you're just so excited you don't even know what the hell to do. And, the camera's in your hand, but you're not thinking about picking it up and taking a shot. And cameras are another thing. Nobody has ever taken a clear picture of Bigfoot, ever. That's amazing. And then, of course, you got the groups that say, well, the reason you can is because they blur themselves out. They blur your camera. Okay. Not saying they can't, but I think one of the best photographs for that was taken in Washington State about 3 years ago. A gentleman who's a professional photographer was up there with some really, the Hasselblad cameras, the whole 9 yards. And he got something standing in a wooded area, and he had the proper lens for that distance and everything else. Everything, including the exact spot where this whatever was seen is perfectly crystal clear. I mean, it's like an oil painting. It's beautiful. The object between those trees that he was actually pointing at was blurred. And he has no explanation for that. He said the camera was set at infinity. It did what it was supposed to do. And there you go.
Well, I'm curious to see when we go back out there later this week what, if any, response is going to be. Because as of Thursday, it'll be 2 weeks since we set up the gifting site.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very, very curious to see what's going to go on, what we're able to find, maybe what we're able not to find.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being that it is hunting season, it would surprise me if we had, you know, people come along that area and maybe clean it up, so to speak. So I guess I'm prepared that if anybody comes across it in their hunt or their walk through the woods, you know, because there is no real direct path in there. I mean, you could drive by it very, very simply if you were paying attention, although it would be a good hunting spot. But, you know, I'm curious, and I'm excited about it. I'm not expecting anything to truly happen, Butch. I really am not. And I don't think you can be, but, you know, there is that potential of what if, because it has been a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and look, it's happened before, and it's not, you know, there are a lot of guys that do that gifting thing, and, you know, they're not out there in groups. They're doing it on their own. They're documenting it as they do it, and some guys have a lot of luck with it. Some guys don't, and it's just part of doing the investigation. I mean, you're trying to find that denominator that something has done something that shouldn't have happened. Like, the toys shouldn't be over there, they should be here. Or the marbles shouldn't be here, they should be there. Or there's a footprint here now that wasn't there before. What's up, you know, I mean, there's just that mystery that, well, that's what stuff like that keeps me going. I just have to have an answer for it.
Well, you know, I'm excited to see what happens because, you know, I'm really hoping, and I'm sure if some hunters walk through there, I'm really hoping that they do show the respect for what we are trying to accomplish there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and they may clean it up by thinking, who are these idiots? I mean, it's not that I can, you know, put a sign on there and say, you know, Sasquatch gifting site, you know what I'm saying? Please do not touch. You know, I did think about putting a sign up there that says, you know, toys are for scientific experimentation, please do not touch, just in case. But then you get the idea that maybe somebody would mess with it, but you could say, put on there, smile, you're on camera, or something along those lines too, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. There's one case, and I have not been able to document this. This has always been a word-of-mouth case. I've heard it 100 times already. And this was in Oregon, way up in the sticks, and it was a gentleman who lived there pretty much all his life. The family lived there. They all passed away, and he was like 85, I think, when he passed. And he would leave out, especially in the wintertime, baskets of food, dried corn, dried beef, you know, that kind of stuff. And he said that he had a really good relationship with something in the woods that he never saw. And the story went that I guess the property was left to a nephew who lived, you know, somewhere down in Southern California. So he decided to go up there and clean the place up and get it ready for sale, sell the whole property. And when he got there, there was a basket and when I talk about a basket, like a laundry basket, a wicker laundry basket, a laundry basket was what he was using. And when he got there, this basket was right in front of the door of the cabin, and it was filled with now dried flowers, but at one time they were fresh flowers. And he didn't know who that was from or where it came from. This old guy, there was nobody really lived around him. I mean, he lived up in that mountain pretty much as by himself. He was self-sufficient. And when he mentioned it to, I think a local sheriff or something like that, he didn't understand where this basket of flowers came from. Did it come from some friends of his or something like that? And the sheriff said, well, he really didn't have any human friends, but he had a lot of friends. And they probably sensed that he was gone, and they brought his basket back. And it was filled with flowers. He never sold the property. It's still there.
Well, I mean, you could also use the fact that would make sense. A lot of people may say, oh, that doesn't work or whatever, but there is documentation of something very similar to that happening in Africa with elephants.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When a gentleman died, he was taking care of some elephants in the wild, and when they didn't go telling the elephants, oh, this guy died, the elephants just seemed to know.
Yeah.
And they came, the elephants showed up, these 5 or 6 massive elephants showed up for the gentleman's funeral to pay their respect. It happens. That's what happens when we get close to an animal and we build that sort of bond. Butch, I'm going to get you to hold on here for one final time as we are going to take our final break of the night here on Spaced Out Radio. Butch Witkowski's Strange Days happens the final Monday of every month. And in the next hour, we're going to get into paracons. We're going to get into some paranormal ties on how we tie it together. We talked a little bit about it in hour number 1. We're going to get into it in hour number 2 as well. And we're going to get into a heck of a lot more, because we never know where it goes with Butch Witkowski on Strange Days. We just kind of go down that path, and that's what we enjoy. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back with more SOR right after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter online only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night on the program, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, Olaf Phillips will be back. We're going to get more into the Secret Space program. We might talk a little bit of Carl as well, since Olaf was on the last time something weird and strange happened around at SOR headquarters here. Once again, everything can be heard at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on the Revolution Radio Network, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Physiophilosophy. Physiophilosophy is your password for tonight. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join our chatting audience in the SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook as a live chat each and every night. We're also on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn and download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. Shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. You can read the encounter online as well as watch UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we introduce Butch Witkowski from UFOcop.com. That's UFOrcop.com. If you want to check out his website. Butch comes on the first, or make that the final Monday of every month. As one of our resident guests here. Butch, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Absolutely. Now, in the last hour, we were talking about gifting sites and a lot about Sasquatch, something we haven't talked about with you in a long time. But I want to shift on over for a second here. And this past weekend, I spoke at the Forest Moon Paranormal Paracon down in Concrete, Washington. Eric Cooper and his wife Izzy put the event on, and it's such a great event. It's so relaxed and chill and a lot of information getting out. How do you enjoy the Paracons?
Well, there's some that are, very large, which are, the multi-day events. The biggest one I was ever at was in Lawrence, Kansas, and that was a full 5-day deal, and it was all UFOs, and it was all the UFO researchers, all the big names like the Stan Friedmans, Peter Robbins, Richard Dolans, Don Schmidt, Jim Carrey, Jesse Marcel Jr. I mean, there were like 22 speakers, and everybody spoke about their own updated case that was, that they were working on, and mine was on, the black arts, the human mutilations in ufology. Excuse me. And I had a ball. I mean, I really had a ball. I met so many really nice people. Met some people that now are actually members of UFOcop on our team. And it was a pleasure to meet Jesse Marcel Jr. and talk to him, and Stanton Friedman. I don't know if I've talked to him many times, but a lot of people that I really didn't. Rosemary Galia, of course, I know her, but I mean a lot of people that I wouldn't have normally met in my travels. I got to sit there for 4 days and 5 days, I think 5 days, pick their brain. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Paracons, although there's a bunch of big ones here in the East, they tend to be more, not so much information as they are loaded with Ghostbusters. You know what I mean? They're more entertainment than they are information. And the ones in the Midwest seem to be more information than they are entertainment. Like the ones here, they'll have a ghost dance. They'll have people dressing up in costumes for a party. It's more of just a get together, where I find in the Midwest and in the South, the conferences there are more or less information being given out, speakers being up there, round tables given, questions, a lot of questions and answers, a lot of PowerPoints and stuff like that, and that's what I find the difference in the Paracons. They're fun.
The one thing that I like about Cooper's Paracon, and we're kind of, as we get ours going next year, kind of following the same path, is I think you have to have a little bit of everything for everybody, because if you have, say, 10 guests, and each 10 guests is talking about UFOs or ghosts or cryptids, the message gets the same.
Yes.
Rather than having a mixture of topics, which I think is all important. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, the last one that we put out was a round table, and we had ghost people there, we had Bigfoot people there, we had our team there, we had a Fortean team, which they pretty much do everything, and we had a group called Legend Hunters, which is they explore all the places that normally a researcher would explore, like caves and canyons and stuff like that. And that was a round table, so it was basically everybody was on the stage, the audience was out front, and it was just open mic. You know, you got a question, here's the people that do the job, and we can help you. And each group pretty much had 2 or 3 people there to stay on the stage at all times. So, you know, when somebody got tired of talking, they just got up, the next guy took over. It worked out pretty well. It was nice. It was, and all the proceeds benefited a historical society up in that area where we had it. So it was really cool. It was fun.
Do you enjoy speaking at them?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because a lot of times you will get questions that you normally don't get, you know, in just a crowd of researchers. I mean, the folks that are sitting out in front of you are not researchers for the most part, and they really have good questions. And some of their questions, you know, like you sit back in your chair and scratch your head and go like, wow, never heard of that before. Or, you know, they put you in another realm. We had intuitives, we had all kind of people there to answer questions. And it was, it is a lot of information given out in a short period of time, but at the same time, the person giving out the information is getting so much information back from the crowd that may or may not, you know, set them on a different trail or different path. And I always said, you don't have to be a researcher or an investigator to come up with a good question. And boy, did they come up with questions. And we're all sitting up there with our laptops just typing away, you know, pulling stuff up and making notes and all that stuff. It was fun. I really enjoy conferences. I don't enjoy conferences given by big groups like a MUFON conference, because it's the same people all the time. I mean, if I go to a MUFON conference and to listen to Stan Friedman, say next year, I'll hear the same speech that I heard back in 2007. Nothing changes, you know. The people in the audience are either older or younger, but it's the same. I'll get to see the same presentation, and I'll hear the same information, and that doesn't get me anywhere. I'd rather deal with the public head on, because that's where you get a lot of good information and a lot of good questions.
What do you think the do's and don'ts of these Paracons are, in your opinion, as someone who's been around quite a few of them?
The cost. Some of them are absolutely crazy. There was one here, the East Coast Paracon, and I think the package for the 2 days was almost $500. People don't have $500 to go to a conference. Our conference, we charged $10, and it was started at 8 in the morning. It was done at 9 at night, and there was food on the premises, So I think the price, but you're paying. These guys get big money. That out of all the conferences I've done, that Kansas conference was the only conference that I got paid for, ever. I mean, they paid my expenses out and back because I drove. I was never in that part of the country, so I wanted to drive. And whenever I get to a place where I'm not in that part of the country, I want to drive. I don't want to fly over it. You don't see anything. And so we drove out, and they drove back. So I got my gas money. I got a very first-class hotel room, meals, all that stuff. I mean, it was really nice. People were great. We even got to drive and ride in the parade the day before it started. I mean, it was quite an event. And to be with all the top names in ufology at that point, to have me in there, I was flabbergasted why I was even asked. But I am the only one that does human mutilation cases, so that was my claim to fame that got me there.
Have you had any further human mutilation cases over the last number of months, or has that seemed to die down?
No, there's one being worked on right now in England. I don't know a whole lot about it. I should have information on that in the next couple months. But it was 2 gentlemen that were found that were done in just like cattle mutilation, which would be like the Brazil case in Guadaparanga Dam. And it's an interesting case, a little bit I've read about it, and as time goes on, I'll get more information, but they're still working on the case. But human mutilation cases go way back. I mean, they've been around a long time.
Do you think that more people this year who are getting abducted are starting to take heed or interest in the research regarding everything to do with it, including human mutilation?
Not so much mutilations. Abduction cases have been going up in the last 3 years. Dr. David Jacobs, he kind of right down the road from me. I checked with him to see, because he gets a lot of cases, and I checked with him to see if his cases went up, and then I called Denise Stoner down in Florida. She co-wrote the book with, the lady, another one just ran right out of my mind. Her family was Betty and Barney Hill. Anyway, I always check with those people because they get the most cases. I get some, but experiencer cases are extremely difficult, and they are extremely interesting at the same time. They're always different. There's always some type of incident that you wouldn't expect that takes place, and it is experiences are. There was just an experience conference last weekend or the weekend before up in Connecticut, I believe. But it's a conference where it's experiencer investigators, abduction researchers talking. There used to be one up in that area, and I can't remember where, but it was up in that northern tier where the actual people that had experienced an abduction were doing the talking, and the audience was pretty much the researchers and investigators, so it was kind of a switch around. And they said that was very, very informative, a lot of information gained. Unfortunately, it was just very expensive, and I don't think they did one for the last 2 years now.
It's funny you mention that, because last week on the program we had Grant Cameron on.
Mm-hmm.
And, about 10 days ago, we had Grant Cameron on. And this is a gentleman who, as you know, has been pushing very heavily, along with Stephen Bassett and others, about ET disclosure and what the government knows about it. Right. And I was actually quite surprised to hear Grant changing his tone a little bit in regards to saying we as researchers have to get back to listening and sharing and researching the stories of the experiencer rather than just putting pressure on the government to open up about what they know.
He's right.
Do you see more researchers doing that, or do you think because of the word science, because of the word government, that we're still blinded by those two words when it comes to trying to figure out what the hell is going on?
Well, I think the experiences are more open to coming out. What I think the problem is the investigators aren't ready for it. It ain't too many years ago that you only had a handful of those type of investigators out there that did investigators, that did abductions and, met and talked with the experiencers. And those guys are all dead. They're gone. I think Doc Jacobs is pretty much the only one left. The new people that are coming on, like I know MUFON has an abduction team, but I know two of those people, but I don't know the other ones. So I know 2 out of 10. So I don't know what kind of information they're gathering or how they're getting it. But Dr. John Mack and all of those guys are long gone. All the good researchers from back in the 60s, in the late 60s, they've all passed on. And there have been very few people that have stepped up to take their place with the knowledge and wherewithal to pursue it. And that's sad. That's a bad part. But, what are you going to do?
Well, it's funny that you mention that, because a couple months ago, or just almost 2 months ago, when Jim Mars passed away, I asked his book publisher, John Goodwin, who was going to take over. And there just seems to be a lot of people right now who are doing the research, and they're aging. They are getting up there, and they are not passing on their research to family members or friends, much like, I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to talk about here. When Tom Clancy passed away, he had already been training Mark Greaney to take over the books. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, right. That's correct.
But we don't seem to be having that happen an awful lot in the field of ufology. We just don't. So, no. And the other issue with that is there really isn't a lot of people coming up from the ages of their late 20s to their 30s and into even their early 40s right now that are trying to take over or make a name for themselves in that research. So my question to you then is, do you think research in these areas of topics are in danger of losing quality researchers?
Oh, absolutely. I just, in the late 60s, from the mid 60s to the late 60s, mid 70s, you had researchers that's what they did. That was what they did. They researched, they investigated, they published what they did. That changed in the 80s, where researchers were, they were following the conference circuit. They were getting first-class airfare, first-class hotels, meals, the whole 9 yards. They were getting paid huge stipends, and they were everywhere. They were all over the place. So if you spend 7 or 8 months out of a year traveling all over the world, giving conferences, how much time are you actually devoting to research and investigation? Pretty much nothing. And that's what we've got now. We've got Well, it's changed a little bit now because now the organizations that are holding the conference today are a much smaller venue. But when you look at Ohio, they have that Bigfoot research conference every year. They have like 2,000 people there. I mean, they're making a ton of money, but they're putting out for it too. I mean, they're paying their speakers, and they're taking care of everything. I mean, it's a nice venue. The hotels, everything's all set up fine, and everybody loves it. So they just go crazy over it. The conferences are as much to blame for the lack of new research as anything, I think. Because, like I said, you can go to any big conference now and listen to a guy that you heard 10 years ago talking about the same thing. He didn't do anything. Or the conference turns out to be you're expecting a speaker to get up there and talk about experiencers or abductions or ufology or cryptozoology or the paranormal, and he promotes his book. So the person that just spent, $100 or $75 for a day, plus their time, trip, meals, room and board, and all that kind of, what'd they get out of it? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they already probably have his book, or they can get it, they can get it online. Somebody probably hijacked it, and they can get it for free. But conferences are a little strange. The ones that really work, that I've seen that really work, where they draw a lot of people, are usually off the beaten path. They are, I'll take Farmington, PA this year. I was there last year, I was there this year, out in the middle of the woods. I mean, it's a big campground, but out in the middle of the woods, on the Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania, where there are many Bigfoot sightings. It was a Bigfoot deal. And they pulled in over almost 500 people. Now, after expenses, they gave to 3 different charities. I think 2 were animal charities. One was a crippled children's fund of some sort. And they each got a check for quite a few $1,000s. But it was all the names, the big names in the paranormal and Bigfoot and ufology were there. Mm-hmm. It was very well received the first year. It was very well received the second year. And you know what? It rained both weekends. Didn't stop anybody. That place was still packed. I mean, Lon Strickler and I were there. We sat under our canopy at our little table and talked to people all day and all into the next day, and got a little wet, but hey, I get wet when I take a shower too.
Mm-hmm. It does happen, that's for sure. And you know what? If people are excited by the event and people are passionate about learning a little bit more, and if you can promote that learning, that's really how it takes off, isn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Keeping the speaker venue open, like instead of having 5 UFO guys and 1 paranormal guy, you have a paranormal guy or a girl, a UFO guy or a girl, somebody that's into being maybe an intuitive or a crypto person. I mean, you got to keep it varied because you don't want to just attract. Let's say you have a conference and you're trying to attract paranormal folks, but there's no paranormal groups in your area. Well, you're not going to get anybody. But if you blend it all together, you might have Bigfoot people that have an interest in the paranormal, or you may have paranormal people that have an interest in ufology. You know what I mean? Keeping it varied and keeping it mixed up really does well for people.
I have a question from the Spreaker chat room for you, Mr. Butch.
Okay.
This one comes from BTO, who is asking, what is your most compelling ghost and extraterrestrial experience? Let's start with the ghost one.
Oh, of course, he's going to give me a nightmare now. Okay. like I said, I was never a paranormal investigator, but I did have a yearning to find out how they do it. You know, what equipment do they use, what procedures, how do they do a paranormal investigation? Now, I'm fortunate that in Reading, Pennsylvania, which is 15 miles away from me, excuse me, there is a group, Ghost Hunters Inc. They've been around since 1979. It's a family thing. It's the same people. They've been around a long time, very well respected. And I asked them if they get a case sometime, would they mind if I tagged along? And they said, oh, absolutely not. So a few months went by and they got a case. And, hey, you want to come along? And I said, yeah, okay. Well, I'm just going to come along as an observer, right? So I meet them up at this place, up in another county, north. And it's a house where there's issues. And the issues are a young girl. They just moved into the house. It was the grandmother's house. She passed away. A young girl, something was attacking her in her room. In the parents' room, lights were going on and off. It's impossible for these lights to go on and off because they work off of one of those, it's a tap, what they call a tap switch. You tap it once, slow, tap it again, it's medium, tap it again, it's high, tap it again, it's off. So you actually have to touch the lamp to make it go on and off. That was going off and on by itself. Other things were going on in the house. So we get there, unload all the equipment, get into the house. They meet with the people. I'm seeing them showing a lot of empathy to the individuals. They walk through the house with them, showing exactly where, what happened to who, when. And then there's a little guy there, about maybe 4 years old, and they had just moved, and a lot of their Christmas presents were still not packed. I mean, they were just unpacked. So he goes over and he pulls up this doll, and it's sealed in one of these plastic containers that you need a hacksaw to get into. You can never open them. You got to cut them apart. So it's still sealed, and there's a little button on the front. You push this little button, and it plays a little tune. Well, then you're supposed to ask it questions, and it'll talk back to you. But at that point, they're leaving, so his mom takes it and says, look, you can play with this later or tomorrow. And she puts it on a little rocking chair, or a rocking chair in the living room. Every room in the house is covered by an infrared camera. So after I did the walkthrough with them and the people leave, I'm relegated to sitting in the kitchen with a family member. And it was her sister, a very nice girl, but a big woman, big girl. And my job was to watch the cameras and notify them if I see anything, right? So we're sitting there staring, and I can see everybody. I mean, I can see everybody in every room, what they're doing, where they're at. And all of a sudden, music starts playing. And I'm going like, what's that? And she said, the doll. So from where I was sitting at the kitchen table behind the monitor to the door to see the doll was 3 steps. So I'm out, boom, 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 I'm there. And I'm looking at it, and it's all lit up. And in a man's voice, a very deep man's voice, it says, I see you. Well, at that point, not being a paranormal guy, I'm looking for a door or a window that I'm going to go through. I can't move because this girl has me by my belt. And she said, you ain't going nowhere without me. And I'm thinking, lady, there's no way I could make it to the door with you hanging onto my belt. So I contacted everybody on the radio, and I said, what happened? I marked the time down, all that stuff, timestamp. And I was hoping that somebody picked it up on a recorder. Well, they didn't pick it up upstairs. They didn't pick it up on the second floor. They didn't pick it up on the third floor. They didn't even pick it up on the first floor. But the people that were down in the basement, their recorder picked it up. So they came up, played it back, but now it says it in a little girl's voice, really cutie little thing, I see you. And I said, that ain't what I heard. And the girl said, no, that's not what we heard. It was a guy. So other things happened during the night. The lights, they even unplugged the lights, and the damn lights went on and off. I mean, they did all kind of stuff that, I wasn't really familiar with doing, but it was spooky. And the folks came back. It was about 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody came back because they were just up the street at the sister's house. And So we told him what happened, and the husband goes in, picks up the doll, and he's looking at it, and he went like, "This talked to you?" And I said, "Yeah, it's on tape." I said, "Only on there, on the tape, it's, on the digital recorder, it's a female, a little female, and when we heard it, it was a man, a real deep voice." And he said, "How can that be? This thing doesn't have batteries." And it says on the back, plain as day, batteries not included. And the only thing that made that music sound was one of those, like a little hearing aid battery that you actually push on it, and it made the little music play. And the thing only does say 5 things. It says, according to the box, it said, the packaging, it said, "Will you play with me? Hi, what's your name? What do you want to do? Can we go outside?" And something else. That was the only 5 things it says. Nowhere on that box did it say, "I see you." So that was my paranormal experience. And then I went on another one with them. And it was an indigenous family, South Dakota Sioux, Lakota Sioux, that moved into northern Pennsylvania. They were having issues at the house. They think they brought something with them from the tribal area, and they probably did, because they were seeing a shadow only in the kitchen on the one wall, and we saw it. And then the son-in-law, who's a brave, was showing me some of his paraphernalia he wears for powwows, and everything was eagle feathers. I said, "I hope you have a license for all them." He says, "Oh yeah," and he pulled out his wallet. He had a license, federal license, because you have to have a license for an eagle feather. You have to be a bona fide Indian. And so he says, "Let me take you down the basement and show you something." So I said, "Okay." So we go down the basement. Now, they just moved into this house. They've only been in it a couple months. The front half of the basement is the washer, dryer, heater, water heater, all that stuff. The back section, the prior owners were making an apartment. So there's a door, there's a closet that's half built, there's a window. And then he said, "Look in the corner over there." So I go to the corner, I'm looking, I said, "Oh, wow." And there's an eagle feather stuck in the cement block wall. And there's no hole. I mean, it's part of the cement block wall. He said, "That wasn't here when we moved here. That only showed up about 2 weeks ago." I went, "It's black." He's there. "Yeah, extremely rare and extremely bad." And I was going to touch it. He said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." And I said, "Okay." So that was my 2 paranormal experiences that kind of made me kind of a believer. And what was the other question? UFO experience?
In regards to extraterrestrial experiences.
Extraterrestrial, I've had a number of those. I guess my first one was my best one, where, well, I can put it this way. I have never seen a UFO by myself. I've always been in the company of one or more people. The first one was when we were living in Tucson, Arizona. Had some guys putting saguaro cactus in that day. Very hot. And my wife went in and got them some iced tea. We were just standing out in the driveway, and I looked up, and everybody else was looking up, and I looked up a little higher, and right above a mountaintop there was a craft that had to be 3 football fields in length, maybe 6, 7 stories tall, a couple pale green lights aside of it. It was like a burnt copper in color, and it was huge, quiet, silent. I'm looking at them, they're looking at it. I looked across the street. My neighbor, who was head of federal prisons for the western part of the country, he was out looking at it. I heard him yell over to me, "What the hell is that?" I looked the other way, and the guy lived beside of me on the other side. He was a doctor. He was out in his pool. He was hanging over my wall looking at it. And it just rose up very quiet, very silently, and just off it went like a bullet. So I called Department of Public Safety. I called Tucson City Police. I called the Pima County Sheriff's Department. I called all the radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, Davis Monthan Air Force Base, the CIA Air Force Base out in Pima. Everybody I could think of. Nobody had any reports of this thing. And that's what started me in UFOs. Because nothing that big was only seen by us. And it wasn't on radar, or it wasn't seen by anybody else. That was a lie.
Have you ever come close? I know you haven't seen an extraterrestrial, but have you missed it by seconds or minutes or hours?
No. Nope. I've investigated cases where they were involved. The other case that will always stick with me, well, there's actually two other cases that would stick with me. I was with MUFON then, and I was chief investigator for the state. And I had just left work. I worked for a Fortune 500 company. One of my investigators also worked at the same company. And I just gotten home, phone rang, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm talking to you on the phone." He says, "I just seen something that I shouldn't have seen." I said, "Well, what's that?" He said he went outside on his break, and he said this bright red, orange, reddish orb passed about 500 foot over my head. He said it lit up the whole parking lot. That parking lot held 1,000 cars. I said, "Okay." He said it went south following Route 272. I went, "Okay." So I took all the information. I made the report. Talked to him the next day about it. That evening, I had another call to make, and it was a gentleman in southern Lancaster County who lived right off of 272, but from that location where it was first seen to where he saw it that same night is about 25, 28 miles. So I said, "I'll be right down." He said, "I'll be here." And so it was a freezing rain, snowy night, and I got there, and him and his girlfriend were standing out in this freezing rain. They were blue. And they said, "We just didn't want to miss you." And I went like, "Let's get out of this." So they were at their grandmother's restaurant, which they helped close up every night. So he starts to tell me what he sees. He's describing the same thing. He's got maps. He made up maps. He made up drawings. And so I said to him, I said, "So this thing went over and it went which way?" And he said, "It went that way, right down that road." And I said, "Okay." He said, "So that's when we got in the Jeep and chased it." I said, "You got in your Jeep and chased it?" He said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, "So how far did you go?" He said, "Well, maybe 5 miles before the cows ran out." I said, "Wait a minute. Where'd the cows come from?" He said, "There's a farm there. The cows broke out of the farm building in the barn and broke out the fence, and they were chasing it down the road too." I went like, "Okay." So now I got an animal reaction, right? So I head back to their place to get more information and, give them my contact information. And he goes, "You may want to stop at the body shop." We passed it on the right-hand side when we crossed the road, the big road. I said, "Yeah, I saw it. You need to talk to that guy." I said, "Why?" He said, "You just need to talk to him." He said, "I won't say anything. You just need to talk to him." I said, "Okay." So I got a hold of him, and the next morning I drove down, met with him, and he said, "I didn't see anything." He says, "But," he said, "You see those two German Shepherds over there?" I said, "Yeah, big boys." He said, "Well, they've been here since they're puppies." He said, "They have never even whittled on the floor, even as puppies." I said, "Oh, that's nice." He said, "Now let me show you something." So we go through the body shop to another part of the shop, opens up into a bigger garage, and there's this car in there. It was a Dodge Polara convertible, totally destroyed by these dogs. They tore the top off it. The seats were all ripped up. The dashboard was pretty much pulled apart. The steering wheel was basically chewed off. It was destroyed. The door panels, everything. It was scratches on the paint, moldings on the body, just ripped off by these two German Shepherds. He said, "Look at the door." And I looked at the door, and they were only about a quarter of an inch of getting through that door. That's how hard they were trying to get out. I went, "When did this happen?" And he said, "Well," and he gave me approximate time when he heard them barking and carrying on and stuff. He was about 10 minutes before the young fella and his girlfriend saw that one. So 5 weeks later, I get another report. Now, this is up in way northwestern Pennsylvania, where a young fellow went to visit his brother who's in college there, and this bright orange red fireball moving very slowly, described exactly by the other two people, is going over the college, and he just happened to have his 35 millimeter camera on a table right inside the door, and they were just standing outside on the patio smoking a cigarette, reached in and he got a great shot. And I have that shot on my website. If you go to the photographs on uforicop.com, you'll see the fireball. So those are probably the most memorable cases. And then there's just one other one besides that, which is I was getting out of work, walked into the parking lot, was standing out there with a couple guys, a couple employees, smoking a cigarette, getting ready to go home. And I see this really bright white light in the distance. And as it's coming toward us at a very high speed, I mean, it's clipping along. You know, I'm looking at my watch to get a time. I'm trying to gauge the size. But this light is so bright, it's like looking at a flashbulb that continuously goes off. And it stops. And the first thing in my mind is like, hot damn, I'm going to get my ride. And it went vertical, turned cherry red, and shot right up into the sky. So, got everybody's information, came home, wrote up the report, put the report into MUFON. 15 minutes went by, and one of my investigators from up north called me on the phone. He said, "Did you see this bright white light turn red and go into the sky report? Who made that up?" I said, "Look at the name on it. It's mine." "Oh, you saw it?" I said, "Yeah, me and 4 other people." And he says, "Hit enter." So I hit enter, and there was an identical case. That was the difference between my report and that report was 2 minutes. I was like 6 o'clock. They were 6:02. And it was a husband and wife unloading groceries in their driveway. Saw the exact same thing 89 miles from where I was standing.
At the exact same time?
Yeah, 2 minutes difference. Which could have been a watch, but 2 minutes. I saw mine at 6 o'clock. They saw it at 6:02.
Incredible.
89 miles. Yeah. Same description. Bright white light turning going vertical, turning bright cherry red and shooting straight up into the sky, into the stars.
Question from Tripp coming in the Spreaker chat room. He says, "Butch, do you think we'll ever have another Phoenix Lights type event?"
I think there have been a couple already. There was just one in, how many? There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lights over in England that were seen. It almost looked like a absolute pattern copy of the Phoenix Lights. And it wasn't flares or anything like that. There's no air bases around there. There's no planes in the sky. I mean, it's a little Devonshire island type deal. And they were seen for approximately, I think it said 23 minutes, 22 minutes, something like that. And yeah, almost a carbon copy. It's a big craft, whatever it is, it's a big craft. It's not single lights, it's a big craft.
I'm wondering, though, because for a lot of people in North America here, we want that situation to happen here, mainly in the United States, because some reason that gives a little bit more truth than when it happens anywhere else.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, a lot of good reports come out of England. I mean, some of the best mutilation reports came out of England. A lot of good UFO reports have come out of England over the years. Not so much abduction, though. I can't even recall an abduction case from England. I'm sure there are, but I'm not aware of any. But a lot of good UFO reports.
But it comes down to disclosure when it comes to the UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we have all of these people pressing, from investigators who are such like yourself to lobbyists like Stephen Greer, Stephen Bassett, to John Podesta himself when he was up high. In your opinion, why are we not allowed to get it out then?
You're never going to see disclosure for one reason. That would be the government telling you that we have lied to you for 50 plus years. That would change everything. That would change academia. That would change religion. That would change governments. It would change a lot of stuff. If everything you believe now was told, or that you were told was a lie, and now you're told it was true, I mean, that would shatter everything. They'll never come through with that.
I tend to believe what you believe as well. I mean, think about it. If you're an ET abductee and you find out the government knew about abductions, and what do they say? What is the stat for the United States? There's over 1 million ET abductees, or 2 million ET abductees, something like that. Mm-hmm. Butch, that's one hell of a lawsuit, because if I find out, well, I am an ET abductee, it has happened. If I found out the Canadian government knew about this, I'm finding a lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm finding a lawyer right off the bat.
Yeah. Well, it would, that's, Stephen Bassett and I sat and had breakfast together at that conference in Lawrence, and we talked about it, and I've been to 2 of his conferences in Washington, D.C., and we talked before about it, and he just thinks that eventually, with enough pressure, he's going to get them to spill the beans. And I told him he's got more chance of seeing Jesus in the parking lot than that happening. It's just not going to happen.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Do you believe then that it's the alphabet agencies that are keeping it quiet, or do you think it's a directive from the president himself?
No, it's the alphabet agencies, and there's agencies with alphabets that we don't even know about. People often joke about the Illuminati and the One World Order. You joke about it all you want, but they do exist. I mean, there's paperwork that proves that, and has for many years.
I don't think we'll see it ever. You and I are on the same bandwagon there. So for those who are pushing for it then, and to try and get that information out, such as yourself and other investigators, how do you go about getting the information out then? How do you go about, getting that solid proof that the skeptics, the mainstream, and even experiencers alike want, Butch?
It goes back to what we started talking about very early in the program. It's the evidence. I mean, you have to have evidence. Talking about it, hearsay, third party, fourth party, means zip, nada, nothing. It doesn't mean a damn thing. But, you drag in a body of whatever, a UFO, a little gray guy, or a Bigfoot, or the Loch Ness Monster, or whatever, that's a little hard to hide, because most researchers are smart enough now not to call the police. They're going to call the newspapers. They're going to call the media. And they're going to have a whole bunch of pictures taken and information done before they even do that. And, somebody comes and says, well, we're going to steal we're going to take your computers. Oh, fine, take them. I don't care. I'm sure you have all the information in there. I don't think so. I mean, there's stuff that I've gotten over the years that they can clean up every computer in this house. Doesn't matter. They'll never find it. And there's more than one copy or copies. So it's if you know how to play their game, you got a good chance. Of course, they can always just shoot you in the head and forget about it. That's the end of that.
But is that something? But is that something as a researcher that you worry about?
At first, I did. I had gotten the strain when I started on the human mutilation thing. I got one of those phone calls that there was no callback number, and there was nobody there. One of those deals, like I should just drop it. But I'm pretty convinced now that was somebody from one of the larger groups that just look. Human mutilation in ufology is like a no-no. That's the dark side of ufology, and they don't even want to bring that up. And as far as skeptics go, if somebody says, well, prove to me that it happened, my answer to them is prove to me that it didn't. Simple. You're saying it didn't happen, so prove it to me that it didn't happen. I just said, I told you what I got, now you tell me what you got that proves that it didn't happen. And usually that's the end of it. I haven't run into two. I think I ran into two skeptics the whole time I've been doing this, which is now 28 years. I don't really care what they say, what they do. I don't do that drama thing. I know a lot of research drive on drama. I don't.
Well, one of the things I said during my speech on Saturday was that we got to get back to trying to debunk. We got to stop trying to debunk everything. We have to get back to believing the story, because the person telling the story will screw up if they're faking it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
They will screw up.
Oh, yeah, I've caught more. I think in all the cases, and oh God, I can't even think how many it's been so far. I know it's in the thousands, cases I've read or been involved in, and out of all those, 3 hoaxers I caught. 3. That's pretty good.
It's not bad at all.
Mm-mm.
It's not at all. Do you think that the day of the hoaxer is coming to an end? Because people are catching up with CGI and they're getting tired of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, one of the things with CGI is, look, if somebody, and I have a very expensive program here that I use for photographs, Photoshop 6, I guess it is, or something like that, but a small fortune. One of the things that kills me is, you know, they spend all this time trying to hide something, right? And I can use the exact same program they used to take it apart, to show me how they did it. And then usually when I send them back what I did, like I took the layers off and I've seen that, you know, here's at this particular time you placed this here and this moved over to here and this was done here and you changed these colors here and you put this background in over here, and I never hear from them again. So, you know you got them. I think one of the best one was I had a lady send me a photograph of a triangle with 3 lights, and it just didn't look right. So I started working on it, and in about 15 minutes, it turned out to be a Cessna 72 airplane, and it was turned upside down. The background and the plane were all blacked out. The only thing left were collision lights, and instead of the red, green, white, she changed them all to white. Unfortunately, when I started layering it, I could make out the front wheel of the tri-wheel landing gear. And then I did a little bit further, and I saw the N number on the side of the plane. And I sent it back to her. I said, nice try. I haven't heard from her either.
My friend, it is that time of the night again. A quick 3 hours with you, Big Bad Butch.
Oh, man. It flies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are you working on in the coming weeks until we have you on the show again, which will be October 30th?
Well, we will probably be back from our first 2 expeditions into our research area. And we should have a lot to talk about then.
I appreciate you taking the time, my friend. You hold on. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Butch Witkowski's Strange Days happens the final Monday of every month. And as I said moments ago, his next appearance will be on the day before Halloween, October 30th. It's going to be fun indeed. I'm sure Butch will have another plethora of information to share with us as well, especially with the ghouls and goblins getting ready to spring on up for Halloween night. I want to say thank you to all members of my team for helping on out. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking us in the background. Little brother is watching. The birthday boy today. Little brother is watching. The official music of Spaced Out Radio is provided by Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. He rocks us in and out of every single show. I want to give a big thanks to everyone in the chat rooms tonight. Whether you're on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, the SOR Space Travelers Club, Spreaker, you guys and girls are amazing. Thank you so much for your support. So thank you so much for your love, sharing the word, spreading the knowledge, because together, my friends, we own the night. We will talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now. I will be here. I hope you will be here as well, because we're going to do it all again. Olaf Phillips tomorrow night, Secret Space Program, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Good night.